Welcome to the End of the Bench podcast. We have myself, Jonathan Slotter, here with Mr. James Haldeman. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. It is a perfect 70 degrees in the Bay, and I watched the Warriors go up on the Clippers by 50 a couple of days ago, so I'm a happy kid.
Yeah, what the heck? It would be on the Clippers to act like they were just totally throwing it away this early.
And the thing about it was that both those teams hate each other. So they both came out playing like, hey, it is the preseason, but we want to win this basketball game. So it was fun to watch them go up that quick. I think I only watched initially the first 10 minutes of it. And I was like, man, maybe I should just go to bed because if this is how it's going to be all season, it's going to be a little bit boring, but I guess it'll be a lot of fun to watch good basketball. So I guess We'll talk about the Rockets eventually. That's the team that is most exciting apparently now.
but yeah, so we're doing the Southwest Division today. Some interesting moves, some interdivision movement among players. This potentially, this has been I would say this has been the most competitive division in the Western Conference year in and year out. I think it's going to get overtaken by the Northwest Division this year because that division's stacked from top to bottom. But still a lot of pretty good teams in this division. I think it's an interesting one to talk about. We'll go ahead and we'll start off with the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks lost Zaza Pachulia to Golden State, Chandler Parsons to the Grizzlies, Raymond Felton to the Clippers, and waived JaVale McGee. And they added Harrison Barnes on that 4-year deal, Andrew Bogut, absorbed him into the cap space so that Kevin Durant could go to the Warriors. Seth Curry on a super awesome 2-year, $6 million deal. And they did it like a throwaway trade to, I guess, just clear some space for Jeremy Evans. Mm-hmm. This guy named Stank Barak, which I just am realizing how awesome and funny of a name that is.
Yeah, that's a great name.
and then they drafted AJ Hammonds from Purdue, who is a rebounding and defensive machine. Mm-hmm. The payroll is currently roughly at 111 million, and next year they will be capped out at 96, and that's pretty much going to be limiting them for their options going forward. I like, given where they were last year, I actually like their team more this year than I did last year. The point guard situation scares me. You have Darren Williams, who's always hurt. You have Barea, who's already hurt, and then you're relying on Seth Curry, who I don't think is going to be able to run an offense. I think he's a good player, and I think he can fit some things that you want to do, but I'm not convinced that he can run an offense effectively.
He can get buckets.
He can get buckets. I'm pretty excited about their wing rotation though, with Matthews, Anderson, and Barnes. I think that's fairly interesting and a really good defensive three guys there, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. Anderson was great down the stretch last year. He's just super athletic. He's the Dallas Mavericks version of KJ McDaniels. He's their Andre Robertson. If he can get his shooting stroke back, which he could shoot before he broke his hand or whatever, his wrist.
Yeah.
And he's had to fix it. But if he can get around to shooting, he's going to be a really good player in this league. I think we'll see some interesting lineups. This team's going to be offensively challenged. And I think what you have to worry about with them is that they lack, like I said, the point guard depth and they lack center depth. Bogut is not going to be able to give you 82 games. Obviously, you'd be lucky if you get 65 from him. So, and they have so they're going to have some trouble there. But I think what will be interesting is that I'm pretty excited for a team where they roll out, either Barea or Williams, Matthews, Anderson, Barnes, and Dirk. I think Barnes at the 4, we saw it in Golden State, was pretty effective. He's strong enough to guard some guys in the post. He can be a better rebounder, but he has the ability to be a really good rebounder. He just doesn't give effort all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think, kind of in a sense, Barnes will be able to let loose a little bit, and maybe he'll be a little bit more the player we thought he was when he came out of college. since he won't be having to take a back seat to some of the guys in Golden State. So I think this team's actually pretty interesting, and and they have a top 3 coach in the league, so you can't count them out.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say what I think Dallas is going to do this year, it's going to be what they've done for the past since they won the NBA title, right? They're going to mediocre their way to 41 to 48 wins, no matter who gets hurt. And you're right, because Rick Carlisle is such a great coach. I'm convinced that like the plague could run through the Dallas Mavericks organization. He could take like 6 guys out of the stands and like a couple children and a couple women and like coach them to 41 wins and an 8th spot in the Western Conference. So that's what he does, right? He's a great coach. You're right about Bogut. He's going to give you 65 games, and in those 65 games, you're going to be happy if he gives you 25 minutes. So you got to figure out some stuff with depth there. And the problem with that small rotation that you mentioned is that they can't play it the other 24 minutes necessarily, because Dirk is also very up in years and can only give you so many minutes at this point.
Right.
I think they're going to be offensively challenged, but they're going to have the potential to be a really good team defensively. Harrison Barnes, like you mentioned, he's a lot denser than he looks, obviously, because he can bang with big bodies in the post and give you some minutes of that 4 position, which will hopefully help Dirk out. I like the wing rotation. I think Harrison Barnes has the potential to be the player that gets a chance when he gets a chance to step out. Could end up being a 20-point, 8-rebound a game guy, but he was even reluctant to be that guy when he was the man at UNC. Right? He had a big ACC tournament, but that was it from his 2 years really. His freshman year, he had a huge ACC tournament. He scored like 40 points in a game. But outside of that, he's kind of been the guy that's content to take a back seat. Even in games where maybe Draymond and Clay or Draymond and Curry sat out, he still just kind of was himself, right? 10 points, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists. So it'll be interesting to see if Dallas can push him more in that be the man direction now that they paid him all that money. And he's clearly what they view as the future there, along with Wes Matthews. I'm excited. I think Anderson's a really good ball player. Plays hard, plays a lot of energy. He's going to be a great defender. So defensively, I don't see a lot of troubles for them. They've got a great wing rotation defensively, which can cover up a lot. If you can keep guys from getting to the basket, right, you can cover up a lot of deficiencies inside as well. But yeah, 7-8 seed in the playoffs. I think they'll be competing for that along with some other teams in the Western Conference. Probably another solid but not record book type season for the Dallas Mavericks.
Right. And I think they're really going to have to be creative on offense, because outside of, Barea, no one's really capable of like really running the offense. Like Williams is okay, I guess, but he's not like he once was. Barea is really good in the pick and roll. He's really good at making his own shot, creating his own shot, and he can create space in a way that while he might not be great at assisting players, but because of the movement that he creates on defense, it creates opportunities for other players.
Yeah.
And, so they're going to have to find ways of like getting Dirk more involved earlier in the offense, or Harrison Barnes is really going to have to step up as a playmaker for them to be consistent on offense throughout the year. I'm not sure that all that's going to be able to come together. But I don't know, like they have some interesting lineups, and I think that one thing that they will be actually pretty decent at, despite when they go small, is that I think they will have a pretty solid rebounding team, because they have a lot of athleticism, even though they'll be playing small and Dirk at the center. So I think this team's kind of interesting. It's one of the more likable teams for the Mavericks in the last 5 or 6 years. So so I won't hate them so much.
I think the one other thing I'll say that I had just thought about is I think that Andrew Bogut's passing ability will open up a lot of things for Rick Carlisle. I think he'll be able to run some of the offense through Bogut in the limited minutes that he'll more than likely be able to give them. But I think that'll help them out a lot. They've got shooters. Harrison Barnes is a capable corner 3-point shooter. Dirk is obviously one of probably the best 3-point shooting big man in history, and Wes Matthews can obviously knock him down. So if you can run a lot of action off of that, off of Bogut in the high post, I think they'll be able to get some good looks.
That's a great point. All right, on to the next team, the Houston Rockets. And the most active offseason, I'd say, out of all 5 teams in the division. Losing Dwight Howard to the Hawks, Terrence Jones to the Pelicans. Giannis Motiejunas is still in limbo. They traded Michael Beasley to the Bucks. and Josh Smith remains unsigned.
Is Dwight Howard really a loss? Are we going to call that a loss, or can we put that in the gain section?
Well, it's who they lost. It's not what they lost.
Okay.
They added Ryan Anderson on a big 4-year, $80 million deal. Eric Gordon also on a 4-year, reasonable $52 million deal. Nene on the $3 million room exception. Gained Tyler Ennis in the Beasley trade, and added Pablo Prigioni for a vet minimum. And then they have some interesting rookies, but that's probably only interesting to me. But
I'm excited about Gary Payton, and I think Wilter's a really good basketball player. I like his game a lot.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Wilter, like, I feel like he could definitely like I know they're expecting stuff from like Sam Decker this year, but I really feel like Wilter could like be like already what Sam Decker kind of like should be, like at least offensively. Like Sam Decker's like obviously more athletic and can do more stuff on the defensive end, but like Wilter's like already a great pick and pop guy, and he's got like some length and stuff. I don't know. Like I feel like he'll have a spot on a roster like a la Robert Covington or like something like that in the future.
He's a good young piece going forward.
Yeah, and you're right. Gary Payton too will probably. I would like him to take the reins from Bev whenever Bev dies, if Bev ever dies.
He's too stubborn.
too stubborn to die.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll be quick and short since you have a lot to say. As a Rockets fan, I've watched the first couple preseason games, and there's a lot to be excited about. The offense has the ability to be the second best offense in the league. Obviously, I don't think anyone's going to touch Golden State, but the Rockets offense is going to be pretty ridiculous. The question with them obviously is defensively. If they can get to like, the 15th best defense, I think they have the capability of being, as high as the like second or third seed. But I think that's going to be a lot to ask, especially given that they're, two things, I guess, that the injury risks of both Anderson and Gordon are pretty high, and they don't have a ton of depth to replace their specific skill sets, which is shooting and ball handling at their position anyway. And then secondly, you have injury concerns with Bev, who is your stalwart defensive point guard, who is, absolutely key to holding this team together on the defensive end, especially if Trevor Ariza continues to slip on the defensive end, although I suspect he'll rebound a little bit this year. And then lastly, I think that the center position is a surprisingly strong position, given the fact that they don't, even though they lost to Dwight Howard with Nene and Capella, you're going to get 48 solid minutes of center every night, which only about 5 or 6 teams in the league can say. So, I guess the couple of things I'm interested is what team they use to close out the games. Is it going to be with Bev, or is it going to be with Gordon, or is it going to be what they need type basis? If they need someone to play defense, are they going to put Bev if they're in the lead, and if they're on offense, they need to catch up? Are they going to put Gordon in? And then I guess the other most interesting thing to me on this team is who has the starting center position, if it's going to be Nene or Capella. And if it's not Capella, will Capella, ever develop into the player that we think he can?
Oh, my turn. Okay. We'll give a very brief, I know you have to be able to watch the Cardinals game, so I'll keep this as short as possible. We'll give a brief history of my experiences with James Harden since he's come to the NBA. I loved him in Oklahoma City. He was awesome, and probably one of my 3 to 4 favorite players in the NBA. Gets to Houston, decides defense isn't that important on an effort level. He is a good defender when he wants to be. That's way overstated. It's just always the effort and attention is not always there. And so it was like finding out that somebody doesn't love you anymore, and that hurt very much. And that is why I started to not like James Harden as much. And then I watched this preseason game against the Knicks, and in the middle of the third quarter, in a game they were up by almost 30, he was in a defensive stance trying to lock his man down. Now, is that going to hold all year? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out because I love James Harden again because their biggest offseason addition was Mike D'Antoni, right? That hiring. I think is going to open things up a lot for James Harden. We were talking about it before this. Like, I felt like it was almost when LeBron didn't have anybody on his team, and you would watch him in those Pistons series or Celtics series, and it was just kind of 5 guys staring at him at the top of the key, run a high pick and roll, figure it out, LeBron. Now, that's the way it's been for the past couple of years with Harden, and he's been spectacular. But now this year he gets the ball out of movement, maybe where defenses aren't able to key in on him because Eric Gordon can be a secondary ball handler, which they haven't really had. They've got shooters spotted up all around him, so you can't shade to him as much. Ryan Anderson will make you pay. Eric Gordon's a really good three-point shooter. And hopefully Trevor Ariza finds his stroke. He didn't really have it against the Knicks, but that's fine because everybody else did. If Trevor Ariza finds his stroke again, that's 3 shooters you're putting around him at all times. Nene is competent from out to about 16 feet. He can knock down those shots. And then Capella rim rolling, you've got to account for because he's very athletic. He's going to finish. So offensively, I think the sky's the limit for this team. Vegas should have the over-under at like 270 for the first Warriors Rockets game. I legitimately believe it's going to come close to that. And then that's not real. I don't actually think that. I'm just excited.
It could be like 234, which would be like ridiculously high.
I would set it around there, but I don't work for Vegas. Luckily for them, probably. Defensively, I don't think there's as many question marks. I think it's like I said, if James Harden puts his effort there, that'll go a long way in helping him. I think Ariza's a solid wing defender. Beverly's just a dog, right? He's a junkyard dog. He's going to guard whoever. Nene is a really confident defender, a decent rim protector. He's better with his hands, getting steals and passing lanes and things like that. And all those guys will account for Ryan Anderson. Mike D'Antoni defensive teams aren't bad. And because we have advanced stats now, right? Everybody looks at points per 100 possessions now. I think I hear him say that on broadcast now, which is very exciting.
Right.
They gave up a ton of points per game, but that's because they were 7 seconds or less, right? They were shooting the ball as much as they could, and that was the reason they gave up so many points. So I think it's a similar situation here. They might give up a lot of points, but I think they can be a good team defensively. And I'm excited for James Harden, point guard. I think his median, well, probably not median, but like high end, he could be a 30-10 guy this year because he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. He's going to have shooters around him, and they're going to be open because defenses are going to be keyed in on him. It's going to be a really fun season, I think, for the Houston Rockets, who I'm going to do it. I think they're going to win the Southwest Division. And
oh boy, hot take.
I'm going to hot take right now. I'm going to hot take and should finish. I think they'll finish second or third in the West. I think
you're right in the sense that the median outcome for Harden will be 30-10. Like if you were to simulate the season like 100 times, it'd probably say like 70, in between 70 of those times, he'd finish in between like 29, 31 and 9 to 11 assists. And then there's, some alternate universes where he goes more or less than that. But I think you're right about the median thing. The one thing that I will say that I believe is interesting, I think that the defense on this team has the potential to be okay the more that I think about it, because they only have a few like negative defenders.
Yeah.
Harden, Gordon, and Anderson are really your only negative guys. Brewer is probably a wash. Nene and Capella are both plus. Bev is a plus. And then you have KJ, who's a plus. So I really think that this team has more defensive parts than they've had in the past. And I think that D'Antoni is more willing to play those parts. Like, they've had these parts, but for whatever, McHale and Bickerstaff just didn't want to play them and use them correctly. KJ's ability to so it's like weird. Like we talk about like vertical spacing, and I think KJ kind of mitigates some of the stuff that like Dwight, where Dwight was good in vertical spacing, and then Capella is just not. He can catch alley-oops, but he's not catching alley-oops like Dwight's catching alley-oops.
Right.
And KJ kind of like mitigates some of that loss in a different way. Like how we talk about like, oh, well, they don't have shooting at the wing, so they go get shooting at the 4. It's like, well, we don't have vertical spacing at the center, so we go get it at the small forward. It's like the inverse world of that. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think Decker can provide a little bit of that too. So I don't know. I think this team's a little more well balanced on defense than people want to give them credit for. I think, and it's just like an effort thing. I think they probably could, but the thing, their max level of defense is like the 15th or 14th best defense. Probably.
I think we're going to have to find out. I think you can scheme away weaknesses, right? I think you can figure out matchups for Ryan Anderson and
right. He's going to get taken advantage of though when they figured out that you can put because he's not going to beat people in the post, and you can put like wings on him and stuff, and then he can't go out and guard wings.
Right. But I agree with that. But
in the regular season, that won't matter as much. In the playoffs,
no, it won't.
It'll be a real problem.
It'll be when teams scheme for you in a 7-game series. It's a much different world in the NBA in the playoffs than it's the regular season. You can get away with some things. I just thought about this. I hadn't thought about it before. What about like a small lineup for the Rockets of James Harden, Trevor Ariza, KJ McDaniels, Ryan Anderson, and P-Bev? That would be a lot of fun to watch. There would just be people shooting and jumping everywhere. Very excited about that right now. Maybe Eric Gordon instead of Beverly.
And the one weakness that the Rockets really have this year that is going to kill them in the sense, I believe, it'll make their defense seem worse than it is. I think they'll be fairly average at getting the first stop, but they're going to be not good at rebounding, and so it's going to make their defense seam worse because they just aren't going to be able to close out possessions.
They're going to have to team rebound.
And I think that's where that lineup has a problem. But in theory, they should be capable. Harden is a good rebounder for a 2-guard, for guarding 2 guards. Bev is a pretty good rebounder for a point guard. He flies in there. He's gotten like 9 or 10 rebounds in a game before. And then, Anderson's capable, Ariza's capable, and Capella. If Nene starts, it's going to mitigate some of that because he's way better than Capella on the defensive boards. Yeah. But I think that's where the problem is going to be on defense, more so than literal matchups.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it'll be good for Capella to get those minutes, right? Because you're going to have to rely on him at some point. So it'll be important to let Capella grow through those things and learn.
Yeah, I think you're right about. He's not big enough. That's all.
Yeah, I think you're right about the point with D'Antoni. He's going to play a lot of the guys that Bickerstaff and McHale wouldn't play because, and I think a part of it was probably they thought their job was on the line, and when coaches think their job's on the line, they're going to rely on veteran guys, right? D'Antoni, I think, is getting to come into the situation comfortably. He's been given the reins to a pretty good team that he has a guy in James Harden who's his best player that can fit the type of style he wants to play. And so he gets the opportunity to play the long game a little more. Hey, let's let Capella grow. Let's let McDaniels grow. And I think that'll be important for them, especially going into the playoffs. If you can rely a little more on those guys, then that'll be super helpful.
Yeah.
But I'm high on the Rockets. I think they're awesome.
Last thing I'll say is teams that have alignment of GM, owner, and coach often overachieve, and I think that the Rockets have this for the first time since Morey has been there, and I think Morey is least on board with it, but he also is definitely in on the style that the Rockets have, and Les has always wanted an up and down tempo, and D'Antoni brings that, and they got guys that D'Antoni can work with. So I think that this is the first time that they've been in alignment since Morey's been there, and those types of teams usually overachieve.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, on to Memphis. They lost, with Memphis, it's weird because they lost so many guys because they just ended up signing like random ass people like by the end of the year to like play basketball. Like they called me, I had to decline because I had to like take the bar exam. And
you're probably going to make more money in your lifetime doing that than what they would have paid you.
And I don't know, those 10-day contracts are fun, but yeah. So I put down that they lost Chris Anderson, Birdman, Matt Barnes to the Kings. Jordan Farmar, I believe, is on the Kings, but he is just there on a tryout. Lance Stevenson to New Orleans, and PJ Harrison signed a tryout deal with Houston. And they've added Chandler Parsons, 4-year, $94 million. Re-signed Conley to his max. Have Andrew Harrison as a rookie. Signed DJ Steffens on a min deal, which is a lot of fun to watch in preseason. Tony Roten, my boy, also on a min deal. And Troy Williams on a rookie. They drafted him, and I really liked him out of Indiana. He's a pretty versatile guy. And I added the coaching in on this because, like we talked about with the Rockets, I think the coaching is an important hire in the Grizzlies system. They have Fizdale, who's a well-respected guy out of Miami, and they brought in Bickerstaff and Rod Smart, who are both also pretty highly regarded assistants. So I like the Grizzlies coaching staff and adding stability. With that said, the more I look at the Grizzlies roster, I'm just terrified for them. Like, if all goes well, they will be good, but they don't have a backup behind Conley that that really can run an offense. I like Roten a lot, but he plays point guard more like a shooting guard than he does a point guard. But he is an excellent defender. Tony Allen is a
First team all defense.
black hole on offense, but Parsons is going to help that out a lot with a three, and that's going to add some playmaking that they haven't had from the wing position in I don't know, years. I'm interested to see what they're going to do at the four, because they just announced that Zach Randolph is going to come off the bench, and so I'm not really sure if they're going to start Brandon Wright or
they're going to start JaMychal Green.
They're going to start JaMychal Green at the four. I like that because I like Wright coming off the bench.
Yeah.
And they might get every rebound on offense between Brandon Wright and Zach Randolph on the second unit.
I think those styles fit well together in their big man rotation now, right? Like Marc Gasol is a guy you can run an offense through, ball in the high post, whatever. And then Zach Randolph, you could also conceivably run an offense through. He's a little more of a black hole, throw it to me, I'm going to get a bucket type guy. But same
right. I mean, he's the Al Jefferson, the Greg Monroe, these ball dominant big guys that can really beat up on some lackluster second unit centers.
And now you get a JaMychal Green paired with Gasol, who's an athletic big man who's going to be great in the pick and roll, going to the rim while you have Gasol spacing or whatever and then you can run offense through him at other times. Then you get the same thing on the other side. Brandon Wright, the uber athletic guy who's going to finish dunks, grab a lot of rebounds, and you can run your offense through Zach Randolph. And it's going to give them opportunity to put Randolph in matchups that they think they can exploit. And he's going to have a high usage. I think it's going to be a good move for them, except at least for putting Randolph on the bench.
You're selling me on their bigs more than I was aware. I like their now that you say that, I do actually really like their big rotation. They have four really solid guys. From all-star Marc Gasol down to just really solid Brandon Wright. They just lack depth on the wings and in the point guard. They just don't really have anyone. You're going to expect a lot out of Harrison. Troy Williams, I think, is really more of a 4 in the league than a 3. And I suspect he is a little small though, so I suspect they're going to put him at 3 because he's like 6'7". But he played 4 at Indiana, and he was pretty effective there. But between Conley, Parsons, and Gasol, I mean, those guys are going to miss more or less. Like, if I put the over/under at like 55 games between the three of them, would you go over or under?
I maybe push it. It's going to be pretty close.
Right. So I mean, that's like 15 games a piece, or 17 or 18 games a piece. So is that going to cost them? Maybe. I mean, you would think they grinded it out last year with a crappy team, so I don't know. But I have some reservations about the Grizzlies, and I really thought I was going to come into this when I was researching today that I was really going to like this team, and it's unfortunate that I don't, because I feel like the Grizzlies are a pretty likable team.
Yeah, I like their big man rotation a lot, but that's what you've always liked about Memphis for at least the last 3 or 4 years. And Mike Conley's a guy that's a borderline all-star point guard. Those are great things going on in Memphis. Tony Allen, first team on defense. He'll let you know. And so what they haven't been able to find is a small forward that could complement and share in some playmaking roles and do a lot of the other things they needed. And they have that in Chandler Parsons now. But when's the last time Chandler Parsons was healthy enough to really contribute to a basketball team?
Parsons really is a great fit for them.
He's a great fit.
And they could even go small with him at the 4, where he is very good, and that alleviates some of Tony Allen's problems. But they just don't have enough. They don't have a 3 to put there in that small.
Exactly. I like their starting rotation and then their big men coming off the bench. Outside of that, you don't have anybody as insurance in case Parsons does get hurt. And he hasn't been healthy since last time he was really healthy was with Houston, right? And so you don't have that. Conley gets banged up occasionally, and you don't have a point guard behind him. So outside of your 7 best guys, I don't see a lot that you have. Luckily for them, if Marc Gasol gets hurt, he's had a couple freak things happen, but he's big, and those things, he's older now. He's over 30 now, so those things would be expected. But they still have 3 NBA big men behind him if something would happen. Like that's not as big of an issue as their 3-1 positions not having a lot of depth when you have potential injuries sitting there. But like you said, they grinded it out last year with Matt Barnes and Jordan Farmar and Lance Stevenson, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So it's a different coaching staff, but it's going to be the same style of basketball we watch from them. And when you slow it down and you've got guys that'll buy in and play hard, you always got a chance to win. So they'll be competitive. We're talking about injuries. Let's hope they don't happen and that this team gets to play to its full potential, right?
Exactly. I think actually you could probably fit Roten in there on one of the wings because he's like 6'5". So
yeah, he's a big guy. He can guard multiple positions.
So maybe that's what you would do with that. I don't know. They lack the flexibility to really, to just match up with other teams. I feel like, and that's going to be
funny because they lack that flexibility based on their roster construction, but they're going to have to be flexible in order to fill out a rotation at the 3-1 positions.
Right. Yeah, they're gonna have to get creative with it for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, I guess I forgot about their cap situation. They're at $100 million this year, a little over the cap, and then next year they're only at 78.6, which is pretty interesting.
That's a max contract.
Yeah, so they have some room to do some stuff. So that's good on them.
Smart management.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. I just realized I did something stupid on this, but that's fine. All right, on to the New Orleans Pelicans. They lost Ryan Anderson, as we discussed earlier. Eric Gordon, same. Norris Cole to China. They might be the only team to lose. They might be the only team to lose two people to China.
That was the shock of the day.
Tony Douglas on a 1-year deal with the Cavs, and then Jimmer Fredette also in China with the Shanghai Sharks. Yeah, I can't believe Norris Cole got paid $5 million. Like, that seems kind of bizarre. But they added Solomon Hill in a interesting 4-year, $48 million deal. Eachwan Moore on a 4-year, $34 million. Langston Galloway on a 10, $2.7, but I believe he has a player option for that second year. Drafted Buddy Hield. Added Tim Frazier on a 2-year, $4 million deal. And added Lance Stevenson and Terrence Jones on 1-year minimum prove-it contracts. They have $83.8 million in payroll this year and $66.1 next year. So I think they're in actually pretty good shape going forward if they want to, if they want to spend some money. This team, I don't know what to expect because you don't know how long Drew Holiday is going to be out for with his unfortunate situation.
Right.
I like this team's depth at the guard. They don't have a bad player, but they don't particularly have a good player outside of Holiday. Like, I think I'm not a huge fan of Tyreek Evans. I like Eachwan Moore, and I like Langston Galloway. I think that's a good, 4-guy rotation to run an offense. But outside of Holiday, I don't think any of those three are particularly good either. Buddy Hield's interesting. I don't know how his game develops. I don't know if he's going to be like Jody Meeks, who also averaged 30 points a game on a really good team in college, and then just kind of ended up just being a shooter. They have similar body builds, really. I think that's a fair comp, but we'll see. And then on their center rotation, you still have a Sick, you still have a Jinka, and then you have. Obviously Anthony Davis. So I guess this team's going to be pretty good on defense. I think with Holiday and with Eachwan Moore, that's a pretty solid defense. I would believe that, Lance Stevenson's solid on defense. Solomon Hill's solid on defense. You're going to get good defensive possessions out of the center with Ajinka and a Sick. And obviously Anthony Davis is a monster. They lack a good three, I guess. Quincy Pondexter, unfortunately, has just been out of commission and able to be on the court. I mean, he was really, really fun to watch and lights out shooter for that Memphis team in the playoffs.
Really good defender.
And a really good defender, and he just hasn't been able to stay on the court. So I hope he's able to do that. But this team's going to really play a drag out style, which I think really contradicts with what Gentry wants to do. So I'm interested to see how they find that balance, or if he's really willing to kind of slug it out and change his entire mentality. I just think this team is really weird.
Yeah. This team is going to go, it's going to be like 2 years ago, right? It's going to go as far as Anthony Davis can take him.
Right.
And he happened to take him to 40-some wins 2 years ago, and he was healthy. But he also had probably a little bit better roster around him. And Tyreek Evans was, I don't like his game, but he was really, really good 2 years ago. He was the part of the reason they were able to go that far.
I like his game. I like his game when you have like some guys that can shoot the ball around him, but I don't like it whenever he's paired with other guys that also need the ball. Like he's yeah. Which is why his pairing with Holiday is great, because Holiday is a really good shooter. But when he's not with Holiday, it's like really, he can't really guard the point guard, and there's not a lot of Patrick Beverleys out there, so it's like, I don't know, it's weird.
It'll be interesting to see if Buddy Hield can guard anybody, right? And if he can guard people, then you could conceivably let Tyreek Evans be your point guard, put Drew Holiday off the ball, and Buddy Hield around him, and then you've got two guys with solid range that are good shooters. Anthony Davis, I don't know if how much more he's worked on shooting the 3-pointer. That experiment didn't go so well last year. And then, I think
that lineup's fun, right? Because you can have Holiday guard the 1, Hield guard the 2, and Evans guard the 3, and I think that lineup makes sense. But I don't know how often we're going to see that lineup on the court.
Yeah,
given how it hasn't really been on the court the last 2 years.
I guess we haven't talked a lot about Solomon Hill. I think he's a good piece they added. I can't believe Indiana didn't keep him for $12 million a year.
Well, no. Remember, they messed up. They did the.
Oh, that's right.
They didn't extend his. They didn't extend his option, and then he was a unrestricted free agent.
That's right. Yeah, that's their fault, because I think he's a pretty good basketball player, and I think he's what is he, 6'5"? He could play a little bit of 3 for him. He could help him out at that position. He can shoot the ball. He can space the floor some.
He plays bigger than he is.
I agree. Yeah.
And then Terrence Jones has talent. Maybe he reinvigorates himself. I don't particularly think Terrence Jones is good at basketball, but
I think Terrence Jones
can things happen.
I think Terrence Jones can be a very good basketball player in the right situation. I don't know if this is a situation, but I think he's got a lot of offensive skills. He's a very skilled basketball player, right? He can shoot the ball to 18 feet. He's a good passer. He can handle the ball a little bit. He can do everything a little bit. He doesn't do anything spectacularly well. And then on the defensive end, he's got some length. It's probably a head thing with him. He's just got to be aware and paying attention. Last season in Houston, I can't judge him on that. He wasn't there. And then Lance Stevenson. When Lance Stevenson's really, really good, Lance Stevenson's really, really, really good, right? With his last season with Indiana, he was almost a triple-double guy. He had a spectacular season, got paid, turned into a goofball, and then maybe somebody can get something out of him here in New Orleans this season. I think you're right about the Gentry thing. He has a lot of pieces that don't fit his up-tempo style, right? He's a 7 seconds or less disciple, and you get complete opposite situation. You get D'Antoni walking into a great opportunity to run that style of offense, and then you get Gentry, who wants to run it and did with the Warriors, but he just doesn't have the pieces here. And he could. Anthony Davis is a super athletic big man. When Drew Holiday's going to be able to play, hopefully everything goes well there. He can push the ball. He hasn't always done it, but he has the potential to push the ball. Tyreek Evans wants to push the ball. He's just not a great shooter. But the problem is their big men are slow to be nice, slow. Right? Yeah, Ashik and Ajinça are just kind of there cloggers on this. Well, Ajinça a little less so on offense than Ashik, but
I think that's why Solomon Hill is kind of an important piece, because he has the ability to play that 4, that like the small ball 4 or whatever you want to call it, because they don't really have another guy. I guess they have Dante Cunningham that kind of can play that too. No, okay.
No, I'm not a big Dante Cunningham fan.
I'm just saying guys that have could do it, I guess.
Bodies.
And I think this is where it's interesting with Terrence Jones. Like, I don't know where he fits on the team, because I don't really think he could play 4 next to Anthony Davis, but Anthony.
That's why I try him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but but when you're doing that, then you're not really being able to play your small ball that Gentry probably likes, and I mean, I don't know. I guess not having minutes for Asic and Jinka is not the worst thing.
Yeah, I not having minutes for Ashik would not make me sad if I was Gentry. I think Terrence Jones, when he's playing well and engaged, is the type of guy. And when I say he's decent at everything, great enough, he can grab a rebound and start a fast break. He can put the ball on the floor enough that he can do that sort of stuff, which would fit into Gentry. But who knows what we're going to see? You're right; they're a weird team with a lot of pieces that we don't. We're going to have to learn a lot about them. What can Solomon Hill do for this team? What is Buddy Hield going to be? And then when is Drew Holiday going to be back? Or probably the three most important questions they got to ask.
Yeah, I bet they're over under. I don't know what it is, but I bet it's probably a little low. But we'll see. Onward, lastly, to the stalwart of the division, the San Antonio Spurs, who they lost. Tim Duncan, retirement. Pour one out, I would, but there's carpet beneath me. Boris Diaw signed with the Jazz. There you go. And David West with the Warriors. They added Paul Gasol on a 2-year $32. David Lee on a 2-year vet minimum, 2nd-year non-guaranteed. Joel Anthony minimum, also not guaranteed. They drafted Deontay Murray and Livio Jean-Charles. Although although I'm not sure this guy is not a reggae musician. Their current situation on the payroll is $110 million.
This is why we're professionals. We ask the hard-hitting questions.
I mean, it's a pretty sweet name.
It is. It's a great name. Two great names.
Yeah, and then next year they're pretty much capped out at $98 million. So this is the team you're going to see with the Spurs for the next 2 years. So I think this team's interesting because I feel like Aldridge and Gasol play the same position, and so I don't know who's going to give up what, and I don't know how they're going to rectify that. If anyone's going to do it, it's Pop. But I just think that's interesting because they both operate from the high post, and I feel like they're going to have like high court spacing, right? Like where they can like spread out on the 3-pointers, but they're not going to have like low court spacing, like beneath the free throw line spacing. Like that's where they're a weird team that doesn't have that.
Well, Aldridge, Gasol, and Leonard all operate in ISOs and from the high post, from foul line extended down. That's where the majority of those three guys' offense operates. So it'll be interesting to see how they run it, right? And Parker is not a great shooter. Danny Green couldn't shoot a basketball last year.
You expect that to rebound.
I hope not. I'm not a big Danny Green fan.
Fair enough. Well, so I wonder, and I wonder how this affects. Like, I feel like Gasol's one of his best attributes is his passing, and I'm not sure that the lanes will be there with where Aldridge likes to be. And I mean, Kawhi's a decent cutter, but Parker's not really great at finishing around the rim anymore. Danny Green's terrible at finishing around the rim. Like, they don't really have guys that play to put Gasol's strengths when the ball is in his hands. So I don't know. It's like kind of funky. Then the bench is going to be fine. I expect to see some more Jonathan Simmons, who I absolutely love. Definitely is a baller. And Patty Mills, I'm sure will just keep on ticking along. Like, Parker will probably be out 20 games and Patty Mills will play like an all-star or something, whatever. But then, they don't have the depth that they once had. David Lee is like also he's a weird fit in a similar sense that Gasol's a weird fit. They're both really good passers, but they both kind of hold the ball longer than what a Pop offense you would ideally think. And he can't shoot anymore. So
right.
I don't know. This team's kind of funky. And we thought it was funky last year too. But they're really going to have some interesting stuff. Like if you have a second unit and you're playing like Patty Mills, Lee, Kyle Anderson, like that's real, and like Jonathan Simmons, it's like a really weird team.
Yeah,
that's like your first 4 guys off the bench, and Manu, obviously. But That's funky.
I am not excited about the San Antonio Spurs this year. Outside of like the twice a game Kawhi Leonard is going to have a steal that like no other human being could have, right?
Right.
Outside of those plays, I just LaMarcus Aldridge is what he is. He's a guy that is not a great defender. Look, they lost a guy that was.
He's got great hands though.
He has great hands. He does. That's why you can grab some. He's a really good rebounder. When he wants to be.
He's fast.
He is.
It's crazy.
He's a very good basketball player. He's just not particularly interested in playing defense, right? So for me, the Spurs had a great regular season, but like we discussed earlier, it's easy to have a great regular season in the NBA until teams start scheming for you, right? And they showed that they were actually behind the Oklahoma City Thunder last year. When the Thunder put it on them, they really put it on them. And
I don't know how much that is true, just because I think like if Russ like shoots like a normal percentage from three, that they probably don't win that series.
Well, LaMarcus Aldridge played like he was from another planet the first two games of that series. If it is what it is, right? So you lost Tim Duncan and Boris Diaw inside. Tim Duncan was even last year like an all-world defender, and Boris Diaw does all the things you need. You're one of your big men to do for the San Antonio Spurs for Pop. He can shoot it a little bit, solid defender. You didn't replace any of that with Pau Gasol. You just got another LaMarcus Aldridge. So I don't know how you are going to keep teams from scoring at the rim against you. Yeah, Kawhi Leonard.
They have length, which is interesting, but it's not athletic length, but it still is length.
Yeah, Danny Green's not that athletic, but Kawhi Leonard he's the best defender in the NBA. More than likely. Then maybe like an engaged LeBron James is a better defender than Kawhi Leonard. But outside of that, there's nobody better.
But like Aldridge and Gasol are like, they're not athletic, but they're like really long. And so even though they're not, like, I think they're decent rim protectors. Like they're probably fine rim protectors, like right at the rim, but they're like not good at, like if they had to recover and contest the shot, that's not going to be their thing. But if they're already in position, then they would be fine.
I think their interior defense is going to get exposed this season. That's just Gasol hasn't been able to guard anybody for like 3 years in one-on-one situations, and it helps. He's just slow now. He can't move as well. And he'll have an occasional game where he gets like 5 or 6 blocks, but I'm not. They'll be fine because Pop's Pop, and he's a great coach, and their system is much. They added a lot of ISO in last year for Kawhi and Aldridge because that's how they had to play. Because those are the two best players. And they'll be fine. They'll be top 3 team in the West, top 4 team in the West probably. But I don't think they're one of the teams that last 3 years you could say the Spurs have a chance to win the title. Tony Parker's looking older. Manu, who knows what Manu's gonna sit 30 games during the regular season just like Parker. You don't have the anchor in Duncan now,
right?
So it'll be interesting to see how if LaMarcus Aldridge can elevate his game on the defensive end, I think that alleviates a lot of my concerns. But if he's the same guy he's been for the last 5 or 6 years, he's going to go get you buckets, grab you a lot of rebounds, and be a really, really good all-star level basketball player, then I just don't see a huge ceiling for the Spurs like we have the past few years.
We might have a debate on the Over-Unders podcast.
Oh, that'll be fun.
So we'll see. But yeah, that's it for this division. We have 2 more left. I guess we'll go Northwest and then Pacific, and then we'll get on to the overs-unders.
Over-under, maybe add some prediction stuff in there so I can talk about how James Harden's going to win MVP.
It's great odds, 15-1.
That's fantastic. If I was a betting man, I would have taken him already.
All right.
I think you got 10 minutes to go watch the Cardinals games. So
yeah,
we'll get you out of here now.
All right. Thank you, man.
All right. Later, man.
See.